John, Anik, and Kenny Florian podcast. John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
I f***ing love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole. There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, John, Anik, and Kenny Florian.
Headshot, bang.
You know, Kenny, I get my nose waxed on occasion. I get my ears waxed on occasion. I've never had my eyebrows waxed because then they look waxed, right? With respect to Eddie Alvarez and anybody else out there that actually waxed, right? But you can see this eyebrow. I took a huge chunk out of my eyebrow trying to thin them out this morning.
Yeah.
So I bring this up. I didn't intend to lead the show with this, but I've always said if I got like 6 or 8 weeks off, I would just completely shave them off or wax my eyebrows off and start over, because I know you can attest to this. You're not nearly as hairy a man as I am, but the maintenance of hair removal, especially for me as a guy who shaves his head all the time, like it's just brutal. Like I'll go to bed, I'll wake up and I have one eyebrow instead of two. I've always thought if I had like 10 weeks off, I would just wax them off completely. But people say they may never grow back. But if you notice a chunk out of my eyebrow, my daughter Tatum was like, can you borrow mommy's eyebrow pencil and like color that in? And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that.
A little thin on that side. Sometimes we overdo it, man. But it looks like I kind of took one of the eyebrows and put it underneath my nose. I got this kind of crappy mustache that, you know, like the ultimate judge is kind of my daughter. Like I remember I showed up. She was probably like younger than 2 and had a mustache on, and she started crying. She was like, no, daddy, no. She just said, no. And now she's like, it's a beautiful mustache, daddy. So True's all in on the mustache. I probably won't have it too long, but here we are, man. A little bit of switching of the roles, I think.
Yeah, you're cleaned up. Although I will say, I mean, I don't know if you can look to your left for a minute. Does anybody see the locks flowing on KenFlo's neck right now? I mean, you're trying to be Jason Anik fucking growing that shit out or what?
I got some length now, kid.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Some point.
I think you should let it go. What does Clark think about the long hair?
She likes the long hair. I'm also thinking, like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to have this hair. You know, like KenFlo, the hair guy. You know, like that might be a distant memory. So at this point, I'm trying to let it go as long as I can. Losing some of I got the 5 head going on, so trying to keep it going, dude.
Well, you look pretty young. It's great to be back with you and everybody else. Monday, January 29th, 2024. It is episode 463 of the Anik and Florian podcast. And this weekend begins a stretch, Kenny, of 11 straight Saturdays with a UFC live event. As most of our viewership knows, since the UFC signed a television contract with ESPN in 2019, there have been some dark patches in December and January. Some of that, I think, has to do with college football inventory, but you know, we hit it hard with the pay-per-view 2 straight live events to begin January, and then the bye week, and fans are like, what am I going to do with myself? And now we have a stretch of 11 straight Saturdays with a UFC live event. April 20th is the next Saturday, the week after UFC 300. That's the first week from here until then that there won't be a UFC live event. So that is very exciting. And to that end, we got Paul Felder coming up here in about 15 minutes, but I want to get into some of the UFC 300 stuff if I could, because it's crazy as we sit here 10 weeks out, we do not have a main event for UFC 300. Now, the UFC has put out some things graphically to suggest that we are waiting on a main event. Whether it'll be for an undisputed UFC championship or not, I don't know. But if you go through the men's divisions, and it does tie in perhaps to Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, Conor pushing out a tweet saying McGregor on 300 seals the deal. So maybe there's a window of hope that Conor and Chandler could headline. But Kenny, when you go through the men's divisions, right? Flyweight, doubtful Alexandre Pantoja, bantamweight UFC 299, featherweight UFC 298. It's not going to be Islam Makhachev, perhaps because of Ramadan. And we already have seen sort of the way the lightweight division has been laid out with Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway. So you got welterweight, Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad, middleweight, depending on Dracus du Plessis' relative health, and then light heavyweight. And of course, the champion is Alex Pereira, and there are rumblings of a UFC pay-per-view in Rio de Janeiro on May 4th, and perhaps Alex Pereira would be held for that date. So we sit here now, KenFlo, and it's not going to be the heavyweight division either, by the way, because John Jones is on the men. So we sit here now without a main event, and I'm just not sure that it's going to be an undisputed UFC championship. I think it might be Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz. I don't know. But I think by this time next week, we'll probably have an answer.
Well, here's the thing. Conor McGregor versus anybody is going to be the biggest fight you could put on UFC 300, right? I assume, him and Chandler, if there's going to be a non-title fight as a main event, it would be that one, right? That's probably the only choice. I think they might be leaning towards a DDP Adesanya fight. I think that's probably the one that I am most intrigued by. And as far as title fights, I think that's probably the biggest title fight that you can put on at this point. Now, I definitely want to see the Bilal Leon Edwards fight, but if they're trying to blow it out, just from a marketing standpoint, from what we've seen in the past, you got to think that Adesanya, being the big pay-per-view star that he has been for the organization, that fight against DDP would be the one to make. Now, it all depends on how healthy both of those individuals are. That would be my pick, but certainly, if the UFC is looking at it and Chandler and Conor are available, then that would be the one to do. I mean, the card's already stacked. It's almost like, do they need a main event at this point? I think they'd be just fine, but I think the UFC is looking to really stack that with one championship fight. And I hope it's Adesanya and DDP. That would be fantastic.
Now, you can be sure that Dana White and Hunter Campbell want to do right by Michael Chandler, who has been nothing if not a promotional soldier. But if you could put together a fight between Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, the fan base would go batshit crazy. But I do hope that they do right by Chandler. And Michael Chandler has responded in kind. Conor McGregor has been out 2.5 years. If he's healthy, why are we waiting until UFC 302? Want to also talk about Dricus du Plessis in this equation because we had his manager, Danny Rubenstein, on our show last week, and he sort of suggested that while UFC 300 would be a massive payday, a big part of the financial gains for DDP are going to be rooted in successfully defending the title and making a defense or two as a champion. So expediting his first title defense or rushing into it on one leg potentially would not necessarily be the preferred option for them. I do want to read a quote here from Khamzat Chimaev because I do think in some part he factors into this equation, whether or not people think he is worthy of a middleweight championship opportunity or not. Here's the quote from Khamzat. All these guys have fought each other and only me is undefeated, undisputed. They promised me after the Utsman fight, I will for sure fight for the title. I won that fight, so I don't know what's going on. I heard Dana White say, I don't think Khamzat is next for the title. That's bullshit, man. If you promise me something, you have to answer it. In my mind, it should be me. So we'll see what happens, right? If I had to make a guess right now, I do think Dricus du Plessis is going to be fighting out of the red corner and the last fighter to walk at UFC 300. But it's really an interesting proposition. Now, I was at my twin brother's house today, and I couldn't find the genesis of these rumors, but he was talking about some situation whereby Leon Edwards would remain the welterweight champion, but the UFC would make that the 175-pound division and then maybe create a title at 165 pounds, and maybe you have Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler fight for that vacant title. Now, a lot of MMA fans hear that and they probably want to throw up in their mouth, but the UFC can really do whatever they want. They created a BMF title, and a lot of people turn their nose up at a championship belt or a belt for the baddest motherfucker on the planet, but that has worked out pretty well.
I mean, we talked about this years ago, John. I remember me talking about, and again, I don't work for the UFC anymore. I'm not trying to push this agenda or anything like that, but I talked about this a long time ago, how I thought that the sport in general should move away from, this welterweight weight class of 170 pounds, and that every division probably should be separated by 10 pounds, even have a 195-pound weight class, something like that. If the UFC can support it, which I think they can. But yeah, I think that it probably makes more sense to go from 185, 175, 165, 155. Now, the timing of this is interesting. I don't know if they're going to go this route. I think there's probably other things that they would need to establish. Perhaps I don't know enough about that, but I do think logistically and logically it makes more sense to have these divisions. Whether they do that or not, whether they do that to accommodate Chandler and Conor, I don't. I guess remains to be seen.
So I believe Conor McGregor's last win, correct me if I'm wrong, was Donald Cowboy Cerrone in January of 2020. Now, if anybody can fight for a UFC title 4+ years removed from their last mixed martial arts win, it would be Conor McGregor. But perhaps that is an option. I will say it seems as though the UFC women's featherweight division is no more. If they have come out and announced the death of that division, I have not heard it. But you are eliminating a women's division, so perhaps there is a window now to add another men's division. And I will say big picture. One thing Lorenzo Fertitta always wanted was to have these championship doubleheaders as sort of a fail-safe mechanism in case you lost a main event or a co-headliner, that you would always have a title fight on pay-per-view. We have had a few pay-per-views, UFC 291, BMF belt, right, but that have not been headlined by an undisputed UFC title fight. But those instances are few and far between. So I do think we are coming to a point, Kenny, instead of doing 12 pay-per-views a year, now doing 14, the timing might just be right to add another men's division.
Right. Well, also, and looking at the card, and I assume this is somewhat confirmed, right? There's 9 fights confirmed, I think, as of right now, UFC 300. So there is space, right? And there is space to maybe have, another title fight or 2 on the card. So interesting.
All right. Well, one guy who I think really would not mind the introduction of a 165-pound division in the UFC, one of my dear friends, broadcast partner, former UFC lightweight contender, the Iron Lung, Paul Felder. It's great to see you, my man.
What's up, fellas?
What's happening, man?
Did we just get off the bike out of the pool? What are we doing today, triathlete?
Today, I actually just finished setting up one of those fancy ice baths with the chiller and the thing. Dude, I'm not a guy that's good with instructions. And Christine, my wife, refused to help me. She's like, I know that you can do this, so I just need to not. I need to not help you so that you'll actually go and do it yourself. And I did. I got the pipes all hooked up and clamped on. Of course, I did it all wrong the first time around. Had to redo all the pipes and all that. But we are in business for cold plunge therapy at a reasonable temperature. Because obviously, you guys know East Coast temperatures right now can get to the point where I'm chopping through ice to even get to that.
Paul the Plumber Felder. I love it. Dude.
And then we have a bike and a run today, guys. An hour and 25 on the bike and an hour run afterwards.
So Kenny was sort of leaning into the Wim Hof stuff before cold plunging was all the rage, right? But there are some of us that just don't do well with the cold, like Bilal Muhammad. He just doesn't do cold therapy. And so there's much more research for hot therapy and the health benefits of the sauna than the cold. But I think the research is going to catch up. There's no doubt it's good for you. But Kenny, you were leaning into that stuff before it was cool.
Yeah, well, a lot of it was because I hated it, man. I hated the cold, and I needed to kind of face that demon. So wanted to learn some techniques on how to deal with it and face that fear. And now it feels great. I definitely think, as far from an inflammation standpoint, it's helpful in that. I think for recovery, it's pretty helpful in that regard. But I also think, mentally, the ability to stay calm and composure and be comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think that's where most of the benefits lie. So, and then of course, there's a lot of other benefits, that they're talking about medically in regards to strengthening your immune system, et cetera, et cetera. So,
yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it's 57 degrees, Paulie, in South Florida today. I could jump in my pool and get some sort of effect.
You probably good because they say, when you see a lot of these guys, Ryan Cafaro is a good friend of mine, is always posting, chopping through his ice out in his backyard in Jersey. But they say below 40, there's no more benefits to it. Do you know what I mean? It's cold enough at that temperature that if it's right around freezing, you're just showing off, basically.
Right. Well, like the sauna is the same thing, right? 172 to 174 is sort of as hot as you need it. And I don't know why I'm trying to pull out my dick and set it to 183, but that's going to do it. All right. So I'm going to ask you this not to be funny, right? But you might think it's a little bit comedic. But I thought we had officially changed your nickname from the Irish Dragon to the Iron Lung. So I'm watching the feature on the broadcast when Frankie Edgar's Hall of Fame announcement took place, and you were featured prominently in that piece, and they fonted you as the Irish Dragon. So I'm just looking for a nickname update here before we get into the meat of the interview.
The disrespect of the UFC. You tell them that you're changing your name. You tell them you want to fight potentially. They don't care, John. They just don't care. They want me at the booth with you or Brendan doing my damn job. Shut up, Irish Dragon, and sit at your desk. All
right. Well, I'm going to affect changes as far as the nickname is concerned. A few things that we want to get to with you, but I do want to show you the new studio if I could, Paulie. See, we got the fucking free shot, right? We got the Felder and Anik F&A t-shirt today. This is where my twin brother normally sits, but he's not here. And then we go back to the one shot right there. But yeah, so we got this studio. This studio is in my master bedroom. And pre-COVID, it would have cost $1 million. But because of COVID and everybody doing these home studios, now these things are pretty cheap. So I just want to show you that. But I want to get into at least the Strickland Duplessis fight and your thoughts on it. I know Kenny has some thoughts on your personal stuff and UFC 300 and everything else. But Sean Strickland, Dracus Duplessis, are you watching that sort of in the middle of the night on the East Coast, one eye open? And what were your thoughts on that middleweight championship fight?
You know exactly how it is. And that's exactly what was going on. And I was entertained and I was watching it and it was back and forth. But again, honestly, 5 rounds before it, right into another 5-round fight. It was so tough to fight. But man, listen, I think when these fights are like that, nowadays it's so cool and so popular for everyone to scream robbery, to scream this. When a fight is competitive like that and 2 guys go and beat the crap out of each other for 25 minutes, and you always talk about it, John, you can't say, oh, well, you got to beat the champ to take. It doesn't work like that. The judges don't score fights like that. They score them one at a time, and then whoever has the most rounds at the end of the fight with the most points wins the fight. So I don't think you can argue it. And what's this? Did this actually happen where Sean, after the fight, had said to Duplessis that he thought he won? I saw quoted that Duplessis had said that. Yeah,
Dracus, I guess, said that this week, Kenny. Duplessis
if that's the case, then it's like, man, there's no argument. If your gut feeling after a fight like that is to immediately tell the guy that you think that he won the fight,
right,
you lost the fight.
Right. There are
it's hilarious seeing the different takes like that. Like some of the biased people on it, they're like, you could tell when they were going to announce the decision, DDP knew that he lost. You're like, guys, come on. Like, seriously.
I think Sean, after the fact, maybe thought that inadvertent headbutt caused the cut. And so maybe that was something that he leaned in a little bit more into after the fact. But Duplessis has been a truth teller like every step of the way. And there's really no reason for him to lie about that. I don't know why he would do that. So certainly an entertaining, if a touch controversial middleweight championship fight to begin the year. But yeah, we'll see what happens from there.
What's next for the guys, do you think?
Right. That's what we were talking about a little bit. It's tricky because Dracus Duplessis was wise to not rush into a title fight with Israel Adesanya last year in September on one foot. But now he's banged up. And I understand the value of a UFC 300 payday as you do, Paulie, but like he's trying to maintain status as the champion. So I would think 10 weeks from now, April 13th would be ill-advised given the travel and everything else. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think you hold on to that belt. You do your little parade. I mean, people are loving him. He had a huge welcome back home. Man, wait until the time he's right because is there a chance that eventually they take that a fight down to South Africa and have him headline and defend there? That would be epic. Yeah. First time in Africa too, right?
Yeah. There are rumors, by the way, that Dan Hooker turned over to you after your main event in Auckland and said, Paulie, I know you won that fight.
Well, he did raise my hand when I retired in the cage. So, I wasn't sure if that was just a gesture of being nice, and see Cody there. Yes, I did win. Thanks, Cody. I do think I won that one. But dude, that now feels like a million years ago at this point. It feels like it was, it's one of those things where it was just yesterday. And Kenny, I'm sure you can attest this, right? Where it's like, you feel like you're in there 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, it's been years.
Yeah, for sure. Agreed.
So we came on the air after Jim Miller called you out for UFC 300, and Kenny felt like that was the right fight to make. And I think a lot of fans were receptive to it. The only thing that I felt like was maybe working against you is if they thought it was just a one-off for you, right? Like if they felt like you were going to be back for 2 or 3 and try to regain your status as a top 8 lightweight in the world, I think that fight might have been made instead of Bobby Green. So I know it's probably a little bit difficult for you to talk about, but what were your thoughts on Bobby Green getting that fight when you were the first name on the tip of Jim Miller's tongue?
Well, fortunately for me that night, I reached out to Who Matters, right? And I reached out to Sean and we were out to dinner. And I was like, let me at least just see if it's even on the table before I get all excited. The media talked to me. I'm like, oh man, this might actually happen. You start getting those butterflies, that nervous feeling, like wanted to go hit pads right then and there. Maybe I am pumped to do this. But the only reason I was reluctant in the post-fight thing that I did too, it's like, you don't want to go out and just make that decision right then and there in front of everyone. That's foolish. I'm an adult. I know that I should go home, talk to everyone, make sure everyone's on board first before I commit to getting into a training camp for the first time in years. But before that even got to that point, I talked to Sean and he's like, man, we're looking to give him something closer to the top 10. It's what me and Dana think is right for him. And I was like, okay. I mean, there's nothing else to be said. I can't argue. I'm not going to. So I never even got the ball rolling into thinking that it was going to happen. But
that was your first mistake, Paul, acting like an adult, man. That was your first mistake.
You're right, Kenny. You're right. If I had been brash and started tweeting, calling Jim this and that, like, let's go, I'd have probably gotten the fight. But instead,
take the suit off, walk into the octagon. Yeah.
I should have charged the cage. That would have made headlines for sure.
Well, I try to be as objective as possible, believe it or not, even in terms of like Bilal Muhammad's candidacy, right? It has nothing to do with our friendship. It has everything to do with him being the number one contender. But I will say, I feel like Paul's career is criminally underappreciated. I feel like you are an underrated lightweight and always were. And when I see like Benoit Saint-Denis get the Dustin Poirier fight, I'm happy for BSD. I'm happy that Dustin Poirier is accepting that fight because he understands he's the underdog and he wants that challenge. But it's frustrating for me that the Poirier and Gaethje fight, both of those fights that in my mind you earned, you never got. And then Benoit Saint-Denis, barely with a number next to his name, is getting that fight.
Yeah, I think that's what frustrates me looking back, right? Where I was that guy, right? I was that blood and guts guy. I was the one that was really trying to, sorry, did I get glitchy there? Was that me?
You're good.
All right. And, yeah, it's like people love him. They get behind him and then they're supporting him getting those bigger fights. But when I was trying to do that, you're right. It was like I shouldn't have even been thinking that. It was delusional for me to think that being on a 3-fight win streak should get you somebody in the top 10 or top 15 after going for fight of the night, all these bonuses, all this kind of stuff. But no, now that's okay. And, Benoit's got that. But listen, I'm one of his biggest fans for sure, Benoit Saint-Denis. I think that guy is an absolute maniac. But yeah, dude, it sucks. But what can I do? I've got the job that I wanted. I get to still be a part of the game. If I really wanted to come back, I still could. I've been talking to you about potential ideas and people were throwing around the Matt Brown idea. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the fight. I'm a lot smaller now. It would definitely be smart to stay at 155.
And Paul, you're still training. Like, how many days a week are you doing stuff these days?
Well, it's mostly triathlon stuff, but I'm still training 2 to 3 times a day, putting in like 15 to 20 hours a week of endurance training. And I could easily just start going right into the gym and training again. And when I've done it, it's still there. I just have to get used to getting the bumps and the bruises and condition the body up for that kind of thing. I would still want a good 10 to 12 weeks before a fight just to make sure that I'm getting a few rounds of sparring in. Is it feeling okay? And then go from there. But I wouldn't go crazy with the sparring either, Kenny, at this point. Like, I would do a lot of timing stuff, I think, to make sure that I was sharp and seeing things coming at me.
Yeah.
But as far as taking the hits, I'd probably limit that to like maybe once a week where I'm putting the bigger gloves on and actually sparring decently hard.
Yeah, man, I think that's a smart approach at this point. You train with some killers, man. Joe Pyfer, Sean Brady are a couple names that come to mind. I know you got some other guys that are coming up. Out of those guys that you're training with, how many of those guys do you see becoming a potential world champion in the future?
I think if Sean stays where he's at mentally, I think that Bilal loss really was what he needed, honestly. Yeah. He needed to face a guy like Bilal who's at the tippy top, who's kind of felt disrespected that he couldn't get what he wanted, and he took him on anyway. And I think a lot of people were favoring Sean, and it didn't go his way. He had to go overseas. He had to do a lot of the things that fighting it's tough, and he got through that and then comes back and gets a huge win. I really do think he's got potential to be fighting for the belt someday. I think Joe Pyfer, he's so young. If he just doesn't try to rush to the top like we see a lot of guys do, I think he hits so freaking hard, man. Oh, I mean, I know I'm a 55er and he's a 85er, but I've been hit by 85ers many, many times in sparring. You can just tell when someone's got the gift, right? And he's got the gift. There's no doubt. I mean, in that room Jeremiah Wells is in that room. Andre Petrosky comes and trains. Pat Sabatini is in there. There's some foreign guys that are coming through and spending time there. and I was joking with John Marquez, the guy that runs Marquez MMA and is most of their head coach and their head striking coach. And I was like, dude, when you start getting the stands to start coming to your gym and migrating, the Kyrgyzstan, whatever, Dagestan, if they're filling into your gym and wanting to come and train with you, something's going right.
Sean Brady certainly looked like a future world champion his last time out. You were listening to the Iron Lung Paul Felder with us here on the AnikFlorianPodcast. Are you working, by the way, this weekend or what?
No, man, I'm not working until Mexico City.
All right, Mexico City, February 24th. That's a great show. If any broadcaster can handle the high altitude, before I let you go,
John, right? How high is it? Over 7, I think.
Yeah, that's bad. We were talking how Duplessis lives at north of 4,000 feet. And I meant to bring it up on the broadcast, right? Probably something that should have been.
And that's right at that sweet spot. If you're sleeping above 4,000 feet consistently, anytime you go down from that, you're going to feel like a machine. Oh, it's right. South Africa's altitude. Yeah.
3,900 feet. Yeah. And depending on where you are.
3,900. Sorry. 3,900.
Yeah. But in Pretoria, where he is, it is like 4,300. But yeah, parts of Johannesburg are 6,000 feet above sea level. But I did find it interesting, and Paulie and I have talked so much about triathlons, that respectfully, when you did address the media, you know where I'm going. When you addressed the media after the Jim Miller call out, I think you were asked about triathlons and the Diaz brothers. Yeah. And I just don't think people quite understand just how close to being like a tried and true professional triathlete Paul is. I mean, the guys at the elite level, I know you'll always be chasing. But with respect to the Diaz brothers, like Paul Felder would probably beat those guys by an hour, if not more.
I think an hour is probably, because I think they could probably do it at, I don't know. I mean, I'm talking shit, but I don't know how many 70.3s they do in general, and that's my main race. I mean, let's say we even race them in an Olympic distance, though. The only place I see them maybe beating me, I don't know what their swim is like. Obviously, swimming is my weaker point. But John, I'm putting the time in, and the numbers are starting to come down on my 100 pace.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, would you do cannabis for those triathlons? Huh, Paul? Huh? Let's see you get on their level, and then let's have a race.
Yeah, I mean, if we smoked a blunt beforehand, they probably beat me because
You're like, I just need a floaty. I'll be good.
I'm trying
take me for a ride on a bike. Yeah.
Where are the sodas at? That's where I'm interested.
Right.
But other than that, yeah, I mean, I John, I'm crazy. Like, and Christine, I drive her nuts, but because I'm training for these things as if I'm a professional. Unfortunately, there's no money coming in. I'm not a professional. But I mean, David Tilbury Davis, my coach, works with a ton of really good pros. I'm really good friends with Lionel Sanders, who's one of the best professional men out there. And these guys I'm nowhere near those guys. But as far as the age group guys, I'm getting to the top. I hope to get an age group win. Now that I'm gonna be 40 to 44 now. So now, these dudes there's less really, really good guys in that age group than when I was in the 30s. But some of these 40-year-olds that have already established their careers, where former college athletes are getting into this shit, and they're so freaking athletic. Wow. It's ridiculous.
Well, I probably shouldn't
beat them all up, though. I think I can beat them all up.
I was going to say, I probably shouldn't say this on an MMA podcast, but I am more invested, if not, as invested in your triathlon career as I am in your MMA career. But I do hope we see it.
I'm glad to hear that, because you are in the minority on that. Because when I post pictures or the little videos of me on the trainer in the garage, to me, I'm like, man, look at the watts that I'm putting out. Right. Look how much sweat I got going on. Do you guys realize how fast I'm going on this fake bike that's actually taking me nowhere except for destroying my quads on a daily basis?
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's like when I talk NFL with my twin brother, people don't want to hear it. But congratulations, Paul Felder, on the recent induction into the CFFC Hall of Fame. I do hope to see you at some point in the octagon. Stay healthy, my man, and I'll see you on this crazy UFC roadshow in the not too distant future. We appreciate a few minutes, my brother.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me, man. It's been nice chatting. Kenny, good to see you, dude.
Good to see you, bro.
There he is, folks. Man. The Iron Lung Paul Felder. I will take it up with Michael LaPlante and Zach Candido. Heretofore, no longer to be fonted as the Irish Dragon. All right. Man, do I miss this guy after an emotional weekend. Let's get to the star of the show, the Ray Longo Minute.
It's now time for the Ray Longo Minute.
I want you to punch a hole in his fucking chest. That's what I want.
The Ray Longo Minute. Starring Ray Longo. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
What'd you do?
Back
What'd
to
you,
back.
what'd you do? Upset everybody? What's the matter?
He's sitting on the toilet. I love it.
No, really, I'm taking a dump. I hope you guys don't mind. I figured after your outburst this week, taking a shit while they do the podcast isn't the worst thing that could happen.
See what happens when I take a break from smoking cannabis? That's what happens.
Oh. First you attacked me, and then you went on a rant. What the hell was going on with you? I feel bad because when I was talking to you, I didn't realize the severity of what was going on. And guys in the gym were walking over. Anik, he's quitting. He's doing football. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So I hope you upset the whole gym. You happy?
Yeah,
happy?
No, I don't even really know what to say. Certainly when we got off the air last Wednesday, I didn't even remember necessarily that rant nor saying it, but I understand now, I think a little bit more acutely the power of my words and perhaps making a statement and being that apologetic in tone was not necessarily the way to go, but I just sort of wanted to sort of move on with my life. And I have the job that I want, and I take my relationship with the fan base very seriously because I feel like I need to be that conduit as one of the forward-facing members of this company. And my life kind of changed over the weekend, but I assure you, I feel the love and support. Not that I was looking for that at all, but my relationship with this roster and the fighters, my ardent supporters, has never been stronger, and I have to prioritize that over all things. But it was wild fucking 72 hours, Raymond. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, right. Well, thank God we got through the group therapy session. Let's try to move on now. Now, what's behind us is not in front of us, John. Let's just keep moving forward, man.
This is what happens when you stop smoking, bro.
I tell you what. No, I'm actually. I mean, it is. We don't have to talk about it, but I read your statement, man. It was crazy, but that's the nature of this beast, I think. No.
Yeah, and I really don't want to dig too deep into it, but I just had a moment here on the podcast. It wasn't really anything more than that. And I guess it was just a lot of allegations of bias in that specific fight that kind of set me off. But tremendous support from the UFC. Had a long chat with my boss, Craig Borsari. And we're on to Anaheim as I close the statement with. But Ray, I have a lot of things I'd like to get into.
And just you mentioned Craig Borsari, man. What a nice guy. That's one of the gems in the industry. That guy.
No doubt about
it. That's a good dude, no matter what. So
back-to-back episodes with you in the bathroom. Is this going to be thematically something we're dealing with moving forward? Or
No. We're getting pictures going this week. We're doing it this week. I'm just trying to hide from the dog.
That's amazing.
The dog's getting old, man. I can't control her. I want to live out the rest of her days happy. Is that a bad thing?
I almost had my dog in studio today as like a bit, thinking that maybe somebody would walk in the house and she would start barking, but I'm so sensitive to noise that I didn't go with it. So I want to read you a quote from a man who I believe right now, even if outside the UFC, is at the very least a top 20 flyweight in the world. Phumi Nkuta, one of your longtime students, walked into your gym as a paying customer several years ago. His story is tremendous, but I want to read you this quote from Phumi, if we could get into him a little bit. And if you don't know, go to Tapology, check out his bio. And this is a quote from your flyweight, Phumi Nkuta. I'm going to say the same thing Longo says. We can run an experiment right now. Put me in the ring with Alexandre Pantoja as an experiment. Let's see who walks out with the belt. I'm telling you, you could put me in there with any of those guys, especially if you give me a camp. I'm walking out victorious. Put me in there against Alexandre Pantoja. I'll out-grapple him. I'll outstrike him. I'll get on the microphone and then out-talk him. For the hell of it, I'll get in the commentary booth and talk about how I did all of that anyway. I just bring something different to the table. It's a different level of confidence. It's a different level of technique. It's a different level of skill. And on top of that, when I get on the mic, especially when I get on that camera, there's a different level of swagger, a different level of charisma. I'm the best man, not top 15, not top 5. I'm number 1 with a bullet.
Good old Phumi. No, Phumi's a workhorse, man. I mean, I wouldn't even talk to me. Talk to Aljo and talk to Marab. He spars with those guys, and he gives everybody fits, and that's why he believes, in what he believes in. But I think that's what the UFC is afraid of too, is that he probably could walk in there. It's like Bo Nickel. Not that I'm not putting him in like a Bo Nickel category accolade wise, but like Bo Nickel could walk in and win the championship. I really believe that. I don't know if you agree with me, Kenny, or not, but he could probably walk in there and win that championship just because he's so strong in the grappling department, and probably he's going to get what he wants. But I don't think that's what they want. They didn't like Demetrius Johnson. He's kind of similar to that type of style, and they just don't like it. So it's a hard thing, but I don't think they're thinking he can't beat people. It's the way he's going to beat them, which I happen to personally think is very exciting. But I love beauty and technique. You know what I mean? Like, who doesn't want to watch Demetrius Johnson fight? I think he's the GOAT for various reasons. And just watch the guy move and listen to him talk. He's a great ambassador, and he was a great champion. But
Kenny, can you talk about Bo Nickel just for a second in that context? Because Nassourdini Mavov and Roman Dolidze are ranked 11th and 8th respectfully in the middleweight division right now. They're fighting in a UFC main event this weekend, and it stands to reason that Bo Nickel would certainly be favored over those two gentlemen right now in a combat sports setting, right? So do you believe Bo Nickel right now could go in there and win the middleweight championship against Dricus du Plessis?
I certainly think it's possible. Again, Ray's right. When we're looking at skills, if we're rating skills and we're talking about a skill set, Bo Nickel's skill set in that division in particular is going to be one of the toughest to beat. The problem is he doesn't have the kind of experience of a DDP or Israel Adesanya, all that stuff, which absolutely makes a difference, right? Being able to do that stuff when it matters, when it counts, at the highest level, when the lights are brightest, all that stuff. Now, Bo Nickel has literally tens of thousands of matches under his belt since he was a kid as a wrestler. So he's been in the spotlight. He's been the best wrestler in the room since he was a little kid. So he knows what pressure is like. So as far as performing, I don't see that being a problem. But absolutely, I think he's one of those guys that could do it. I don't think he should do it at this stage of the game. Get some more fights, get some more experience, make sure that when he does get the belt, he can keep the belt. But yeah, I do think he's that good. I do think he's that talented.
Yeah, and then, John, let me say something. Chris Weidman, when he was coming up, what did he have, 4 or 5 fights?
Right.
He got in the UFC, and then how many fights did he have when he fought for the title? And he didn't fight for the title. He fought the best motherfucker in the world for the title that was pissing on people, making people look stupid, and he beat him 2 times in a row.
Yep.
And Bo Nickel's, like again, I don't know. I'm assuming the mentalities have to be similar since, the route they went. And Bo Nickel's accolades obviously trump Weidman's accolades. But, Weidman was a street kid too. And I think that played into it a lot when we were coming up, because he did love to fight. But, I think he's a perfect example of what could happen with hardly any fights. And he fought the greatest of all time. I think almost, or he's in the category of that. And I think a lot of people defend that. So that's where I'm coming from with that. I think I've seen it before. And Bo Nickel seems like, when I listen to him speak, he has the confidence. We know he's got the wrestling chops. He looks like his hands are good. He's throwing. His mom was a boxing coach. I say throw him in there.
All right, so one of my favorite people in the UFC is our handsome matchmaker, Mick Maynard, and it happens to be his birthday today. So happy birthday, Mick, right? But
nice.
Happy birthday.
You mentioned sort of his name in that answer about Phumi Nkuta, and it seems like maybe there is some promotional pause to sign this flyweight right now, and I'm curious as to why. I mean, he seems to have all the skills. You mentioned that maybe they don't want to expedite things, but you can certainly do worse than bringing him in and having him fight a guy who's top 25. But I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I don't quite understand the disconnect as to why seemingly one of the best flyweight prospects in all of MMA is not of immediate interest to the combat sports leading UFC.
Well, that's 100%. Well, first off, I didn't mention Mick Maynard's name.
You didn't? Sorry.
That's a question for Mick Maynard. Well, I didn't mention it. I didn't mention it today on the show, I should say. But that's a question for Mick, John. You know what I mean?
Right.
And trust me when I tell you, I've spoken to him. He'll have no problem,
all right,
speaking his mind to you.
Well, I remember Dennis Bazookia, and it's a totally different case, right? But it took him a while to sort of break that UFC door down. And I do think eventually Pumi's going to be in, and maybe he'll be better off for it, right? I think he was born in 1995, and he just has more experience, more high-level experience than Bo Nickel, even right now, despite the fact that Nickel has been in the UFC. Does he not, right? I mean, he's got more fights than Bo Nickel. Pumi does.
Well, he's got more fights than Bo Nickel, but, the background of experience, I wouldn't put him in that category.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens for Phumi Nkuta going forward. I want to ask you a little bit about UFC 300.
Yeah.
Because I do think the fan base is waiting for this big shoe to drop. And Kenny was sort of saying, if you look at UFC 300 on paper, it looks like the first fight of the night could be Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez, one woman who has won a championship, fought for a championship in a second division against another woman who has headlined at least twice for the UFC. And that's the first fight of the night. So I'm sure you've seen some of the headlines, Conor McGregor maybe dipping his toe in the water. What do you think is going to happen at UFC 300? And will you feel shortchanged if the main event is not for an undisputed UFC title?
I'm the wrong guy to ask. Listen, John, honestly, I enjoy the fights every week. So I think the more they build up 300 and it falls short is a mistake. I mean, it's almost like becoming a joke. Everybody's waiting, and they're almost setting it up to be disappointed. But I'm sure whatever fights they put on, Aljo's on the court. I'll be enjoying all the fights. I mean, I'm not looking for anything special. I just, I don't know. I'm simple, man. I really am. I'm simple. So no, I won't be shortchanged if they don't do anything. I just want to see good fights. As long as the matchmaking's good, I'm good to go, and I'm very psyched on Aljo versus Calvin. So that's all I'm really going to concentrate on. But I'm a junkie at this point.
You really are. It's crazy,
really
right?
junkie,
Like you weren't always that way. We launched this podcast in April of 2015. We're coming up on the 9-year anniversary. And maybe you have been that way for a decade, but you're like the anti-fucking Mark Henry. He was on here and we're like, hey, just keep right, you're getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. So no, I don't watch MMA.
Wait, he knew Frankie was getting inducted, though. No,
no,
didn't know.
He'll be there this summer, but no, Frankie was probably banging Hallerhead all day and had no idea they were about to send him to Media Row.
Wow. Listen, I like that, man. The guy's moved on with his life. He always said after Frankie, look, they had a special relationship. And he always told me after Frankie, he was basically done. So I think that's what made that, relationship special. And, God bless him, man. He moved on with his life. The world doesn't revolve around MMA. Unfortunately, for my boring life, it does. But, besides that, people have other things to do. But I kind of admire that in him. I really do.
Yeah,
he moved on. He did it. He came in, he did his thing, and he got out, so. And
he also makes so much fucking money making pizza, right?
Yeah,
he opened a second Pino's in New Jersey, Woodbridge, Cody's telling me, right? Like guys like Corey Anderson and Kenny Florian will tell you, it's not important to look rich. It's important to be rich, And I think Mark Henry's probably rich at this point. So
no, without a doubt. That's I agree. It's more important to be rich.
Corey Anderson's like, I'm not trying to look rich. I'm trying to be rich, right? Like I drive a fucking minivan. I'm not rich, right? Like Corey Anderson is. I drive a minivan for more reasons than one, but we're in the process right now of potentially getting my wife a car that she's not perpetually embarrassed in, right? So trading in the minivan, but I said to her, maybe I'll trade in the Audi SQ5, which is my car that's just really fast, but other than that, not particularly functional. And I said, maybe I'll keep the minivan. And she's like, I want to drive a minivan. Like she's like, you're going to be driving a UFC 299 in Miami. Don't you want to take the Audi? No, I want to drive a mini. I want my boss to see me pull up in a Honda Odyssey with no rims.
Hey, listen, that's an old school thing with guys that own companies, man. They drive in Benzes in their neighborhood, but when they go to work, they take the shit box so that everybody thinks they're not doing good.
Right.
Let me tell you something. When I pull up in a caddy, I'm getting charged more money for some reason.
No doubt.
It's really the way it goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So It is what
well,
it
and I
is.
dressed like a complete bum. I mean, if you see on the wide shot right now, we could barely see I'm wearing like sweat shorts and my daughters are completely mortified as to how I dress. So I look the part when I get out of a minivan that's all beat up. You mentioned,
I love it. And I give you what I was wearing, John, but I move into the toilet bowl. So I can't. I'm stuck here.
So it's interesting. I lost a girlfriend, a woman that potentially I was going to marry because I spoiled a surprise. There were other reasons why I lost this woman, right? But I spoiled a surprise party, but I was coming from a good place, right? But I ended up spoiling a surprise and she never forgave me, right? So Frankie Edgar was going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And my bosses would have killed me if I had spoiled the surprise. But we had Frankie on the show last week, Kenny, and he sort of intimated like, yeah, next time, like, tell me, dude, like I'm drinking and doing all these things. I think it would have been nice for Frankie to have the heads up in that particular setting. But Ray, it was not my position to spoil that surprise for Frankie. But I think he would have liked some advance notice.
Well, listen, at least you learned your lesson. You're a quick learner. That's good. You know what's funny with that? Sarah, I forget which birthday it was. Probably, well, I don't even know, but he had a surprise birthday party. His wife was throwing him. And there was one of his instructors kind of posted something on Instagram that gave it away. He never forgave the guy. So this surprise party thing is, I know where you're coming from. I mean, he was really, really pissed off because he thought it was done on purpose. You know, I'm not mentioning no names right now, but it was done on purpose. Never forgave the guy for that. So
I believe it.
You blow a surprise birthday party, definitely on his shit list. So,
Kenny, I'm like an extroverted introvert, sort of an introvert in some ways, living in this extroverted world, you know. But how would you feel if somebody threw you a surprise party? I think the people close to me know that I'm not looking for a surprise party.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of surprises in general, let alone surprise parties. I just kind of be like, hey. But man, interesting.
I'm with you, and John, I'm with you. What are you, an introverted extrovert? I really believe that. My wife threw me one surprise party from when I was 40. That was it. I don't even like celebrate my birthday, especially at this time. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, no surprise parties. Another no with me. When we go out to eat for my birthday, don't you fucking tell the place it's my birthday where they bring a fucking cake and I got 4 fucking Strombolis fucking wishing me happy birthday. I want to kill myself, man. You got to put your foot down sometimes.
That's grounds for divorce as far as I'm concerned. Don't ever fucking sing to me in a restaurant, you know? And my twin brother and I will get it like, it's the fucking twins, you know? Look at the weird freak show. They look and sound the same. It's their birthday. Never.
You got to sit there and make like you're happy. Happy birthday. Thanks, buddy. Fuck this, man. Guys came here to eat. That's it.
Well, right. I got one daughter who wants to wear like a birthday pageant band around her and have the whole restaurant sing to her. The other's like, Daddy, please don't tell anybody. I'm like, thank you, Tatum. I don't want to let everybody know it's your birthday. Hey, Ray, I have one more thing for you if I could. So Aljamain Sterling always had to go to great lengths to make 135 pounds. Maybe it was easier when he was fighting Johnny Eduardo back in the day, but this is a man who had to go to great lengths to make the weight, and now he's competing at 145 pounds. Reciprocally, we have Kayla Harrison making her UFC debut at 135 pounds, and Miesha Tate was quoted on SiriusXM this week, and she essentially mentioned the time that she remembers when Kayla Harrison was imploring the PFL to have a 155-pound division, KenFlo, never mind making 145 pounds. And she says, I guess I'm speaking from personal experience because when I went down to 125, although I did it and still at a pretty decent camp, I just didn't perform at my best. And I think Kayla is just used to being a big, strong woman, that she won't have that on her side. And I'm really curious to see how that's going to benefit her with someone like Holly, who really does move so well. Obviously, there's the fight before the fight, and Aljo's going in the opposite direction. But what are your thoughts on Kayla Harrison fighting at 135 pounds and how it potentially could impact her performance against someone like Holly Holm?
Yeah, me personally, I think it's going to have a big impact. I mean, Holly Holm, even though she's getting older, I don't think it's a joke. If you ever looked at, I had a buddy of mine show me the line on that fight, John. Holly Holm's like a plus 385, and I'll take that bet all day long. plus
Right.
385 for that.
Right.
And this is the first time she's coming down to 35. And I agree with Misha Tate. She's used to being kind of the bully in there, but I just don't think she fought the quality of people that even remotely resembles a Holly Holm, even at whatever Holly is. What is she, 40 years old now?
Yeah, over, I believe,
Yeah, think about it. But I think Holly Holm is going to pose a fit for her at 35. 45, I would look at it differently. I think that extra 10 pounds, like, again, and it's always the thing, Kenny, we go through, it's one thing making the weight.
Yeah.
Can you fight at the weight? And that's the problem. Can you fight at the weight like you were fighting 2 weeks before? That's the trick to me. And the guys that can are always going to do well. But the guys that struggle with that, it's tough, man. Some guys, Aljo, I don't know if he's making 45. I just saw him. I mean, he's fucking he's huge. I think I was sitting with his fiance, and I was like, his ass is coming out of his fucking shorts like he's huge. That guy is huge, and so he's gonna get it down. He'll make 45 easy, but I'm telling you, Aljo, he might be 180 right now. I mean, he's big. He's a big kid, man.
Kayla Harrison minus 410 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Holly Holm, the plus 320 underdog. Misha Tate has gone ahead and predicted Holly Holm. She said, I think 135 is going to really suck the life out of Kayla, and it's not the best move. And I will say, Kenny, and you know this, like, you're betting the number and not the fighter, right? So I would imagine a lot of handicappers and bettors are going to see value on Holly Holm even before they see Kayla weigh in.
Yeah, listen, I don't think it's going to be an easy weight cut, but I would imagine, if Kayla, does everything like the way she has done, in a very professional manner, that she has the right people around her, that they believe that she's going to be able to do it and do it well. And that's the key, man. For me, I think it all comes down to how well that weight cut goes. If the weight cut goes well, and she's able to use that as a positive test run, I think she'll be extremely successful and ultimately be a champion in that division. But that's the big question mark for me, is really making the weight. Holly is never going to be an easy fight for anybody. But Kayla, when she gets her hands on you, she's a completely different type of woman herself. She is as strong as they come, and she's just so muscular. So, assuming she does it correctly, I think she'll be fine. But Holly's going to be a challenge, man. I think if she goes out there and gets an impressive win over someone like Holly, I think people are going to start to really pay attention, and the UFC will kind of confirm what I think is a true star in that division in Kayla Harrison.
Ray, has Aljamain Sterling ever fought at 145 pounds?
Nah, not that I know of, no.
So to what extent are you excited to see him compete up there? There's still going to be a weight cut, but I'd imagine you're pretty excited. Slight underdog right now against Calvin Kattar, coming up at 300.
Well, what are the odds? What's the odds?
He's minus 102 right now, so it's pretty close.
It's an even fight. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, very excited. Yeah, I start in a couple of weeks. I start to run again every month, so it's exciting.
It is interesting how your schedule has gone. Sorry, Ray cut out there for a second. It's probably a good time to just bank that interview with Ray Longo, but it is interesting how his schedule has gone. You back with us?
No way.
You back with us?
I'm back with you. I'm sorry, but
I was going to say,
I'm happy I'll be able to go through the airports. Yeah.
No, right. And Ray Longo, by the way, if you're looking for an update on his hip replacement, he is walking pain-free, doing everything but kicking in the gym. So we're happy to hear that. But it is interesting how your schedule has gone. It seems like it ends up being stacked together, and then there's a little bit of a respite. But your next big date, obviously, is Merab Dvalishvili, Henry Cejudo coming up in February in the Big A. Yes?
Oh, yeah. Very excited for that, man. And I'll tell you what, man, shout out to Merab, because I don't speak to him, obviously, like I used to. But this guy, if he's writing his own material, I think they're blowing something with this kid too. He's good, man. This video, I mean, I just, maybe it's because I know him and I watched him kind of grow up. I mean, but he is hysterical with some of his videos now. He's definitely unleashed at this point. I think he's doing it. I think he's doing a great job.
Kenny, I'm so glad Ray brought that up. I don't know if you've seen any of what Merab Dvalishvili has done recently or over the last year or so, but could not agree with you more. I mean, everything from this guy waywardly diving into ice and smashing his head open swimming without Joe and Ally Quinta in those waters. I mean, there are so
stealing
many.
Sean O'Malley's Michael Jackson jacket.
How does this guy not have one of the biggest fan bases in the sport? He probably does.
Yeah, how do we not promote this guy? Come on, man. This is hysterical. I think I sincerely get like a belly laugh when I see this guy. And again, I might be biased because I know him, and he was, he barely could speak. He really didn't speak English when I met him. And now the guy's doing videos, and maybe it's the accent that's helping. But when he did that thing where he calls out this guy calls out this guy, I thought it was again, if he's writing his own material, man, I give him an A+, or whoever's writing it, I give him an A+, but I get a kick out of it.
Yeah, I would check it out on Instagram, Rob.Dwalishwilly. Over 2,100 comments on that video that you're referencing. So he's doing a lot of things right and certainly resonating with the fan base. All right, my man, you got anything else before we let you fly? We got a main event this weekend. Nassourdini Mavov, Roman Dolidze. You watching, obviously?
I'm watching.
I can't wait.
I can't wait, John. I can't wait.
All right, buddy.
But,
well, get off the can. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week.
And listen, sorry for the slight interruptions every so often because I could see your face contorting.
No, we're good.
But I'm glad to see you back in a good. Glad to see you back in a good spot. Everybody loves you. You're one of the true professionals, if not the only professional in the business. But man, just your work speaks for itself. Your passion speaks for itself, and I don't know. You always, no matter what happens, you always got me and Kenny. Who gives a shit?
That's right. I always got
me and
KenFlo. That's right.
What do you care about?
What else does he need?
Joe Blow that you don't even fucking know making a comment.
Yeah.
He's sitting in his house miserable. We're gonna feed into that bullshit. You got me and Kenny.
Right.
Let's fucking go.
I love you.
Next week.
Thank you.
You guys too, man. Take it easy.
See you, Ray.
What a way to go out. The Ray Longo Minute every week here on the Anik Florian podcast. Yeah, I'm sure KenFlo last week is like, dude, what a soft pussy. Time now to spin this thing forward. It is UFC Fight Night. Dolidze versus Imavov. Let us get to Brian Petrie and the main event challenge.
It's the main event challenge. Anik.
The time is most definitely now.
Florian.
I finish fights. I'm going to do everything possible to win.
The main event challenge. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
What's up, boys? Signing face star to keep you waiting, brother. How we doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. That's how you end a Ray Longo minute. Right there. You get the Ray Longo on the toilet screaming. That's how you end the fucking segment right there. I love it.
Dude, how about your guy Chris Curtis putting my broadcast partner Dominic Cruz on blast?
Ooh, well, I almost texted you, Johnny. After Chris fights, I always let him breathe a little bit, right? I don't hammer him right away. So on Monday, I texted him and he's like, bro, I've been waiting for you to text me. How about fucking Dominic Cruz? He's going off on Cruz. He's like, usually it's DC. He's like, there's video of me yelling at Cruz. And we had a good text exchange about old DC Dominic Cruz there.
I would have to watch it back to provide any sort of context. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I think maybe, part of the issue was these fans in that arena were largely spoiled all night. And for whatever reason, they did not respond favorably to that fight. And so perhaps that became part of the narrative. But you know me and you know how close I am with Dom. And dude, just sat in my room watching film all weekend. Like there's certainly no malice there. And I do believe that Eric Nixick and Dominic Cruz are going to connect on that. But I guess that's neither here nor there. How are you doing, man, with this week off? Sort of a slow January before we now hit it for 11 straight weeks.
Tell you what, I'm going to confess this. I was so bored on Saturday. I know there was bare knuckle. I know there was LFA. I watched the fucking Royal Rumble. I grew up as a wrestling fan as a kid. I haven't watched wrestling in 20 plus years. I knew the Royal Rumble was like a big deal. And I dozed off a few times. And I support everyone that watches the show. I know there's a few followers that watch this that are wrestling. It's not for me. It's not for me. If it's for you, that's great. It's just not for me. I power through and this is not my cup of tea. So I am so fucking excited that the fights are back and we have a run. So I think after UFC 300, I think every weekend we got a show. So I'm a very happy man.
All right, my brother. Well, we're excited to get into some predictions today. I'll update the standings here in a moment, but we do have a pronunciation of the week. One of my favorite segments on the show. And nothing made me happier, by the way. I was at Publix grocery store here in South Florida, and there's this plantain chip company. I think it's called Chief Lay's. And they have the phonetics written on the fucking bag, KenFlo. You know why?
Nice.
Because people are going to keep buying your plantain chips. They probably need to know how to pronounce the brand. Oh, what's that? Chief Lay's. Yeah. So I like seeing those phonetics.
Nice.
All right. So Roman Dolidze is fighting in the main event, Brian. I feel like this name gets butchered a little bit. So who is Roman fighting in the headliner this weekend?
So I've done a lot of tape study on this guy, not only for this, but he fought Chris his last time out. So I'm probably still going to get the fucking name wrong. That's how my brain works. Nasruddin Imavov is what I'm going with.
All right, Cody, let's trigger that audio, sir.
Nasruddin the Sniper Imavov. Encore? Nasruddin the Sniper Imavov.
Yeah, Kenny Circle gets the square for me. That's a hit for BP. You agree?
I'm on board.
Oh.
Yeah, Brian nailed it.
Oh.
Kenny is always the last line of Argus Integrated
Kenny,
Defense.
stop.
Check out A&R Tactics. A&R Tactics. My wife's like, are you on Argus Integrated Defense Instagram page again? I was like, yeah. Well, there were like 30 videos that I didn't see before I started following this company. And I'm trying to get the day. I got all these new haters now. All right, great job, Brian. Yeah, I do hear Imavov more than Imavov. So it's really just about emphasizing that second syllable, Imavov, and not Imavov. All right, main event challenge presented by DraftKings Fantasy Sports. Check out what DraftKings has to offer this season with code AFPOD, because life's more fun when you're in on the action. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. All right, I'm going to update the standings now. I don't know if you guys know exactly where you stand. Brian Petrie was at plus. Yeah, you got to check my numbers here, Brian, okay?
Yeah,
so you were plus $374.75 heading into UFC 297, minus 500 on Brad Katona in a fight that could have gone either way, minus 200 on Sean Strickland in a fight that could have gone either way, but plus $270 for your $100 bet on Neil Magny, and then plus $111.11 on your $200 straight bet on Movsar Evloev. So minus $318.89 for the week, but I still have your year-to-date total in the black at $55.86. Where am I wrong?
That's it. You got it, bud. That's what I got. Numbers check out.
I doubt that KenFlo did this math. Maybe he did. Kenny, you were at plus $237.18. Minus 200 on Brad Katona and minus 100 on Arnold Allen. The losers you guys trotted out there could have been winning tickets. You had minus 400 on Maida Bueno Silva, but you did have a big $300 straight on Dracus du Plessis, and that was at plus 114. So you won $342 on that fight. Weekly total minus $358. You are down $120.82 on the year. Now we will get to the picks for UFC Fight Night. Dolidze versus Imavov. Friendly reminder at the end of this exercise, you guys will have $1,000 to make in bets on the fight card this weekend. Kenny, any further questions, Your Honor?
I was going to ask, do we have to spend all 1,000? Is that the deal?
You do not, right? Bri, what's the verdict there?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, listen, I'm going to spend $1,000 because I got it. But I have no problem with holding. To Kenny's point, I think what he's saying is this is a tough card. I'm not going to lie. This is a tough card.
Yeah.
So I never leave money in my account, right? Like when you have a bookie, you have like a max limit, and that's when it's really dangerous, right? But when you're betting on an application, as I am down here in South Florida, Hard Rock Bet, I make a deposit, and then once I place the bets, that money is gone. So it works a little bit differently. My account's always fucking empty. I can't wait till DraftKings Sportsbook is live here in South Florida. I'm gonna lose so much money. All right. Featured prelim at strawweight. So Molly McCann minus 270 here against Diana Belbitsa, who comes back plus 220. Brian Meatball McCann dropping down 10 pounds, making her strawweight debut, and does so as a fairly big favorite here against Belbitsa. Belbitsa repping House of Champions, Stony Creek, Ontario. Last fight for her unanimous decision loss to Karolina Kovalkiewicz last October. Brian Petrie, anything for us on the featured prelim, sir?
I like the weight change for Molly. She wasn't very, very big. I typically don't like the weight cuts, especially when you get older, but I like this move. Kind of spiced up because, listen, they gave her the bustle in Blanchfield and she got mowed over. She got destroyed. And then they gave her kind of a layup with Storylenko, who is very inconsistent, but has one move in the armbar, and she got caught in the fucking armbar. So this is like reset mode. Let's go. This is a winnable fight for her against Dana Belbita, who's very, very active, throws a lot of hands, starting to mix in takedowns, which is Molly's kryptonite, I'd say. I think Molly's working on that. She comes from a jiu-jitsu gym, so hopefully she can tighten some of that up, but she wants to stand on the feet. She wants to land a spinning back elbow. She wants to do all those things. I think the number's wide. I think, if I'm playing hard-earned money, I go Belbita here. But since we're picking and I'm not going to lay money on this fight, I'm going to go Molly McCann. I love a good meatball. I love Molly McCann. I think she's going to have the harder shots while Belbita's going to have the more volume. And we'll see how it ends up in the judges. I think it's going to the scorecard, so over 2.5 is a good play as well. But give me meatball. I like meatball.
I like that extra play there on the prop. Kenny, was it the wedding singer when the meatball gets put in Adam Sandler's hand and he's like, that's a good meatball?
That's a good meatball.
That's what I paid. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, Kenny, real quick, I just want to set up Molly McCann 0-2 since signing with Barstool Sports. The submission loss, one of which was referenced against Erin Blanchfield, also Yulia Stoliarenko. And that was really following for Molly what was like a star turning 18 months in 2021 and 2022. So a lot of pressure on McCann, big number next to her name. How do you think she fares here against Belbita?
I think she should be okay. Belbita isn't a huge threat when it comes to the submission game. She might be a little bit better on the ground than McCann. McCann certainly is vulnerable there, needs to improve, but you got to imagine she's been working hard on it since her last fight. I think her takedown defense should hold up here. Belbita, isn't so big for the weight class. She doesn't have that knockout power either. So I think McCann should be the more powerful fighter here. I think she's going to bring a little bit too much pressure. Belbita's very tough, but I think this is McCann's fight to lose. I like McCann here.
All right, next up at welterweight as we kick off the main card, Gilbert Urbina minus 218 taking on Charles Radke plus 180. Radke, as some of you know, the teammate of Bilal Muhammad, VFS Academy under Mike Valley there in Bensonville, Illinois. Bilal is going to be in Radke's corner this weekend, but he's the underdog here, Bri, against Gilbert Urbina, whom I've never seen fight live, but comes from a fighting family, got his first UFC win by stopping Orion Kosi due to strikes at a fight night last May. BP, what do you think here? Radke with some plus money next to his name or what?
Do you guys smell that? Small fucking rat line. What is this line? What are we doing here? Chuck Buffalo at plus 185. I mean, we're crazy. Gilbert Urbina comes from a fight family. Yes, his win in the UFC against Orion Kosi, whose only win in the UFC is Blood Diamond, who Charles Radke beat. So what is the Vegas thinking here? Urbina, 6'3", tall, lanky guy, but inexperienced, doesn't like getting in the mud, likes to fight pretty, likes to fight long. Chuck Buffalo is going to get in those trenches. He's going to get in the mud. He's going to take him down. He's going to let him back up. He's going to beat him up. This could be a close fight, I think. I think Urbina is going to try to stay pretty, but I think Chuck Buffalo's not going to let him. And at plus 185, I mean, come on, we're riding with Chuck Buffalo. Charles Radke, I think he's training the better guys. Not to mention his 3 losses: Austin Hubbard, Ultimate Fighter finalist; Chris Gonzalez, having a pretty decent career over in Bellator; Justin Montalvo, Ray Longo's guy, who's 5-2 overall. Yeah. I mean, the guy's fought some really good people, has won against some really good people as well. I'm all over Chuck Buffalo here.
And Chuck Buffalo, that nickname is in my notes, but I didn't want to steal Petrie's thunder. I think we both agree that it is probably the best nickname in MMA. I can't think of a better one. KenFlo, Chuck Buffalo taking on Urbina here. Who do you like?
Yeah, this is an interesting fight. I think that there's certainly some great value on Radke here. I think he's the more technical fighter overall. Just looks smooth, but Urbina does have a way of winning and making it look ugly. I think where Radke needs to be sharpest is he needs to have an answer towards that forward pressure of Urbina. He's got to stop the takedowns. He's got to be able to not let him smother him, all that stuff. So he's going to have a very disciplined approach. And, Brian was talking about one of those losses that he faced in Justin Montalvo. And that was a fight where he was winning the whole fight, and then kind of threw it away, got hurt with a body shot, and then just crumbled. So hopefully that's not the case. I'm a little bit worried for Radke maybe late in that fight. He's got to stay disciplined, got to be in shape for this one against Urbina. But I do think he's probably the more skillful fighter. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win. I'm going to stay away from that one from a betting standpoint. But I think there's some great value on Radke there.
How about these guys doing regional film study a full week out? And I will say, even though for you guys it is unfair that you have to make these picks on Monday, it is of tremendous value to people out there trying to get the best possible number. And it may not be that the best possible number exists early in the week, but I think you can do worse than getting picks from these guys so early in the week, because a lot of the handicappers don't go on the record until later in the week. Our big friend, Big Ron, right? Waiting all week to get that Anik Florian podcast parlay out there. All right. At middleweight, he's going to fucking kill me for that. Ali Askhab Khizriev, the forgotten man, minus 185, taking on Mahmoud Muradov, plus 154. So Khizriev, 14-0, American top team here in South Florida, also reps Eagles MMA, submitted Dennis Tululin in his UFC debut. That was all the way back in March of 2022. Hasn't fought in 2 years since, Bri. What do we make of Khizriev getting back on the horse this weekend?
So Khizriev is a guy that surprises me. He's 5'9", a little pudgy, probably should be at 170. Rocks at 185s, right? Beasting people, doesn't matter. He's got that mountain man strength, right? And Murdoch's a guy who I was high on. You know, he was the Floyd Mayweather sign guy. He had sharp hands, comes in there, lays a dud, and then he became a wrestler against Brian Barberina, who he outsized tremendously, landed 13 takedowns in that fight, and just kind of drowned out Barberina. This is an interesting fight here. You know, Khizriev's a guy who I think is undersized. I don't know how much success he's going to have at 85, but I like him in this spot here. I think he's tricky. I think he's a guy who kind of sleepwalks through a fight, and then the minute he sees an opportunity, he jumps on it. He's not jumping off the map to me. He's not blowing me out of the water, but he wins, and he's very precise, and he's very technical at what he does. He'll get your back. He'll take you home. That's it. That's a wrap. I like Khizriev here, and if we're playing props, and the props are not right there, I like Khizriev, maybe possibly by submission as well. But yeah, give me the Russian.
Nicely done, Bri. I really like this fight, Kenny. Khizriev, really an intriguing guy for the UFC. He was forced to withdraw from a matchup with Jacob Malkoun last September. And then Muradov, obviously, with the Floyd Mayweather money team connections, reps Uzbekistan, born in Tajikistan. What are your thoughts on this one? Not a bad price on either side if you like one side.
Yeah, definitely. I think Khizriev's the real deal. You know, a lot of people have compared him to Khabib, like so many people who fight out of Dagestan. A lot of people make that comparison. And, you know, I think this is a pretty fair one. I think he has a similar style. I think he might be even a little bit more of a dangerous striker. Now, Brian nailed it with the assessment as far as his weight class and what weight he should be. I think he'd probably fare a little bit better at 170 pounds, perhaps. But still, his speed, his ability to take you down and control you is still going to be a handful for anyone at 185 pounds. I'm curious to see how Muradov's wrestling holds up against Khizriev here, but I think it's going to be a little bit too much for him to handle. I think just the pressure, the volume, and it tends to build over the course of the fight. And like Brian kind of alluded to, when he sees that you're hurt or vulnerable, that's when he really pours it on and tries to get you out of there. And I think that will be the case here for Khizriev.
All right, next up, Team Bohacha's Natalia Silva, minus 340, taking on Serrato MMA's Viviane Araujo, who is plus 270. A little setup for you gentlemen. Natalia Silva, bro, has got a lot of momentum right now. Flyweight, 4-0 in the UFC, beat Andrea Lee. That was UFC 292 last August in Boston. A lot of experience, just 27 years old, 16-5-1. But how about this on Araujo? She's 37. I don't know if she's in her fighting prime or not, but she's fought 6 former UFC title challengers or champions. So advantage strength of schedule to the older woman here, Araujo. She fought Alexa Grasso, Caitlin Chukagian, also coming off a pretty impressive win over one of those former title challengers, Jennifer Maia, and that was last October. She's 6-4 in the UFC. VP, you like Silva the favorite or Araujo the underdog here?
This one's for the boys. I feel like I haven't delivered a good one in 2024 yet, but we're going to go this isn't my pick, but Viviane Araujo. That's my I nailed that, Kenny. Don't laugh. You know I fucking nailed it, Ken. Viviane Araujo.
Wait a second. So I laughed and I messed it up, so I'm gonna need you to clean it. Say it again.
All right, because guys, when I do her name on my podcast, they always laugh at me. It's Viviane Araujo. That's it. Kenny, don't laugh. It's clean. That's clean. No, listen.
I turned my mic off so that I wouldn't steal your thunder, as you were, Brian.
Yes. No, so I think she has an identity crisis. She's fought the elite of the elite, and she's came up short in some of those things. And now she's starting to mix in wrestling, and she was a power puncher coming when she first debuted in the UFC. Now she's kind of like doubting her power, and she's trying to mix everything in, which is good, but sometimes it leads to a little bit of a lackluster fight, and she's not really putting her name out there anymore. And then you got Silva, who I think is an absolute fucking stud. I mean, her losses all happened earlier in her career, and she's just going out there and winning and winning. The Andrea Lee fight, I know Andrea Lee, she's been flirting with the top for a while, but no one really just just shuts her out. It's usually a split decision. She walked through Andrea Lee, and Andrea Lee's tough. She mixes in takedowns well, and Silva shut all that down. Before that, she's winning by knockout. I like Silva here. I'm willing to pay the price as well. I'm minus 340. That doesn't run me away. But I like Silva big here. I don't think she can get a finish because Araujo is tough, and she's been in there with everyone. But I like Silva to really style on here and make a stamp and go, I'm here. Another Brazilian top contender in this division. So, give me Silva for sure.
KenFlo, I know Cody's bemoaning the fact that I didn't do Viviane Araujo as our pronunciation of the week, and the reason being, of course, that we have done that before. But what do you have for us on the ladies, KenFlo?
Yeah, this is an interesting fight. I think Araujo is very tough. But I think Silva is the kind of striker that when she gets in her rhythm, that momentum just tends to build, and she just gets better and better. A lot of that has to do with her footwork, her rhythm. She throws some of the nastiest shovel hooks out of any fighter in the UFC, male or female. She gets into that striking lane, and she will destroy your face if it's there. And I think Araujo will probably take some big lumps. I think, her side kicks, her kicks to the legs, I think those are going to be a problem. Araujo tends to be a little bit plodding with her footwork. Doesn't mean she's not dangerous, and she hits hard because she is a little bit flat-footed. However, as far as trying to keep up with someone like Silva, I don't love that for her. I think that Natalia Silva is a big favorite, probably because of that reason. I'm not sure I'm going to touch this one, but I do like Silva here. A little bit of value on Araujo, but I think Silva's footwork, her striking is going to be a little bit too much. I don't think Araujo is going to be that much of a threat. If she does take Silva down, I don't think it's enough to really threaten her with submissions, maybe. But I like Silva here as well.
At Anik Florian Pod, should Kenny Florian have to spend his $1,000 every week? Yes or no? Evan Longoria, please chime in as well. All right, next matchup in the welterweight division. Rude boy, Randy Brown, minus 238. Muslim Salikov is plus 195. Randy Brown's 33 years old now. That makes me feel like a fucking fossil. He's 11-5 in the UFC, getting ready for his 17th UFC appearance. Last one was a pretty good one. Unanimous decision to win over Wellington Turman. A while ago, though, 7 months ago in Jacksonville. And then on the other side, real quick, King of Kung Fu Salikov also coming off, a loss, to Nicholas Dalby last June. But strong UFC record, I should say, as well at 6-3. He will be 40 in June. Your thoughts here on Randy Brown taking on Muslim Salikov?
Yeah, so I'm glad they kept this fight together. This was supposed to happen. Randy Brown withdrew because of illness. And selfishly, I'm glad they kept it together because I'm all over Rude Boy here. I think he dominates. I really, truly do. Muslim Salikov is a guy who comes out aggressive. He wants to kill you. He wants to take your fucking head off, and then he slows down. And I think Randy Brown, who has been chinned before, has been knocked out before, needs to be careful. But I also think he needs a finish here. We haven't seen a finish from Randy Brown in a while, and we need a finish out of Randy Brown, I think. And Muslim Salikov's a guy you can finish late in the second, early in the third. Randy Brown does have good cardio. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a submission out of Randy Brown, possibly a TKO if he just wears him down with strikes. But I'm all over Rude Boy here. I'm glad they ran this one back. And minus 245 is a gorgeous number. I thought he'd be placed a little higher, but I'll take it. I'll take Randy Brown.
By the way, I just noticed Petrie's shirt. Select your fighter, which can be yours at johnanik.com. And that is Petrie's mug on that shirt. If you could hold it up real high. No, I like that Petrie single, Cody, all over it. Phenomenal producer, director, Cody Merrow. But there's Petrie's face on that one side. Nice.
Whenever I wear this, my kids go, Daddy. I say, yeah, that's Dad.
Awesome.
KenFlo, Randy Brown, minus 238, Muslim Salikov, plus 195. Any thoughts for us on this?
Yeah, listen, I think this is going to be a very difficult fight for Salikov. I think that when you have a guy like Randy Brown who is going to be long and more athletic and knows how to utilize that jab and those long-range strikes, It's a great way to nullify an unorthodox style, a guy with a different rhythm like a Salikov. So I think Randy's got to get off to a good start with that jab early, establish that range, and he's got to be on point with his takedown game. It's almost that simple. And I think if he's able to do that, I think he wins this fight. I think he's going to be a little bit too athletic, a little bit too long and lanky for Salikov. Even if Salikov's able to get him to the mat, I don't see Salikov as that, like, Shazam style of submission game on the ground that could pose a problem for Brown. I don't think it really be like that. So I think Randy Brown's going to be able to win this fight, look good. I like him in this spot a lot. I think it's a great matchup for him.
Yeah. All right, co-main event in the lightweight division. He is back. Money Moicano, 13th ranked Renato Moicano. And it's amazing how much more excited I think the fan base is now about this guy. He's minus 142, taking on 15th ranked Drew Dober, who is plus 120. So Moicano, Bri, was all the rage after he submitted Brad Riddell at UFC 281. That was all the way back in November of 2022. Huge fight now for Moicano in the co-main event this weekend. How do you think he handles the power and the striking game of Drew Dober?
I hope he's getting paid, man. Money Moicano. Listen, Ray talked about it, about Merab putting out funny content, which is the video Merab put out. It's hilarious. Moicano is very funny himself. He's got English down, but it's still a little broken, and it's very funny. He's funny on Twitter. He calls everyone out, which is hilarious. He's got a big fight here, because Moicano got knocked out twice at 45, got put out, and then debuted against Fiziev, got knocked out as well. Got knocked around by Rafael dos Anjos, So there's a little bit of a chin issue. And Drew Dober, all this guy does is knock people out. His last 7 wins are from knockout. I mean, I know people are sleeping on Dober a little bit because he's up and down a little bit. I was a better plus money on Dober, but Vegas is smart. So we're not getting that. But I'm all over Drew Dober here. I think Drew Dober wins this fight. Moicano, Drew Dober gets taken down by elite people, but he plays guard and then he stuffs the head and cage walks. He doesn't hip out and jump up, exposes his back. He might do that when he's desperate. Moicano's got a great rear naked choke. I don't see Drew Dober exposing himself when he's on the ground too much. I don't think Moicano's wrestling is all that good. He sets up his wrestling very nice with the striking, but Drew Dober, with that bulldozer of a head, he's got a refrigerator head, can take those shots. He can give shots, and I like him by knockout here. I like him stunning this crowd here. Again, I wanted a juicier number on Drew Dober, but I'm going Drew Dober. Plus 120 is fine by me, but I'm going underdog here.
Kenny, if a criminal had to be killed with one punch, I think I probably send Josh Emmett in there over Drew Dober, but I think Dober has a lot of similar qualities at lightweight. When you see some of the consequences on the other side of Emmett's power, it's like these guys are really concussed. And Drew Dober, I think, has that similar one punch, really scary threat here. What are your thoughts on this co-main event as Moicano tries to make a real statement here against Drew? I think you're on mute, brother, but we love your fucking mustache.
I'm sorry. I got some landscapers over here. I can't keep it off for too long. So listen, I think that this is an interesting fight. I see it a little bit differently than Brian. I do know that Dober, no question about it, is very dangerous. He has the ability to put you out with one shot, especially with his hands. When he gets into a rhythm, he also is very clean with his Muay Thai as well when he's getting on with his combinations, as opposed to just looking for that one big shot. What worries me about Drew is sometimes he gets a little bit too reckless, and you can get reckless with some of the other guys that maybe you faced in the past. Let's say like a Ricky Glenn, right? I'm looking at his fights right now, a Bobby Green, a Rafael Alves, Terrence McKinney. But I don't know if you can get away with that against someone like Moicano, who is very dangerous as well. This is a guy that hits hard as well. I think he's got the better submission game as well. I think being the taller, longer guy can pose some problems for Dober, who really does his best work in tight. When he gets into that boxing range, when he's in close, that's when he can rip the body, go upstairs, land those big shots. But I think that Moicano sometimes has a tendency of getting reckless. So this is why it's very interesting. I've seen some improvements in the game of Moicano. I like the fact that I think he's a little bit more durable at 155 pounds than he is at 145 pounds. I think he's had some time in between fights now, and And I like him in this matchup. I think it's going to be interesting. I think if he can keep Dober on the outside, land shots, and be patient, and be defensively sound, I think he wins this one. So I like the odds in his favor too. I think I definitely see some good value on Moicano.
Money Moicano has dealt with some injuries too. He was to face Arman Tsarukyan April 29th of 2023, but he was forced to withdraw. And he did say on our shoulder program, remember the show with Bilal Muhammad and Jason Anik on the Anik and Florian Podcast YouTube channel, that he learned to swear from playing Call of Duty. And man,
nice.
That guy knows his fucking way around an F-bomb. Does he not?
That's funny.
Does he not?
Nice.
By the way, all clips from this program can still be accessed on the old channel, Anik and Florian Podcast. That includes our exclusive interview with the new middleweight champion, Dracus du Plessis. But we would love if you would join us over on the Draftkings YouTube channel as well. Subscribe and watch full-length episodes over there. It would really help the program. Anyway, poll results, main event matchup in middleweight, 11th ranked Nasruddin Imavov, minus 166. Number 8, Roman Dolidze, is plus 140, and 62.5% of you like the underdog Roman Dolidze. Huge year for the middleweight division, obviously, to begin things. Belt on the line earlier this month, and now another headliner in this division. Imavov's last win, Bry, came all the way back in 2022 against Joaquin Buckley. Lost a main event unanimous decision to Sean Strickland last January, a night on which he was supposed to face Kelvin Gastelum. Then, of course, the no contest against your guy, the king of combat, Chris Curtis, due to the accidental clash of heads. That was UFC 289 last June. Now he draws the hard-nosed Georgian Roman Dolidze. Who do you have in the main event?
So I love when a main event or any fight stumps me, right? I'm like, what side am I? This is it. This is 50-50 in my mind. I reached out to my guy, Chris Curtis, who I was talking to earlier this week. He trained with Dolidze, has trained with Dolidze, and fought Imanov. So I said, who we got here? He didn't give me a firm answer. He just says Imanov surprised me.
All right. I let it go the first time. I mean, the second time. It's not Johnny Imavov.
The sniper Imavov.
Listen, I messed up the first time. If there was an edit button, we could edit it out. I kept going because I'm professional. All right. Listen, Nasruddin, I'm just going to go with that because that's fuck right. It, Jay. He's slick on the feet and his takedowns are getting better. Him off his back is what worrying me. Dolidze is a big guy for 185. Probably should be at 205. We're being honest with this. And he's cocky down there. I still remember him looking in his cornerman, back-to-back fights going, you want me to take his leg? I'm going to take his leg. He falls for leg, doesn't get it. I mean, it's like, if you're going to be that cocky, finish the submission. But he's very good. What he did to Jack Hermanson on the ground was surprising. He's slick for a big guy. Covered in hair, and it's just a big gorilla, punches hard. The Marvin Vettori fight, we all split hairs. Who won that fight? Who really didn't win the fight? But when it comes down to me, is both these guys have struggled with cardio. I think Nasruddin is cleaner. I think Dolidze is more powerful, has more ways to win on the ground. But I don't see Dolidze going 5 rounds. I think he's going to try to get him out of there in 2 rounds. I think if he can't do that, he's in a world of hurt. Imanov has went 5 rounds before with the former champion Strickland. Slowed down a little bit, but got a second win. Didn't get finished. Landed over 100 strikes himself. I'm going with Imanov, and I'm not looking back.
All right. And Cody, please remind me the next time Rafael Fiziev fights, I'd like to run that back on the pronunciation of the week. All these fucking Fiziev guys out there. Fiziev. Kenny, the Georgian Roman Dolidze, I like how this episode has come full circle talking about hairy men. He had won 4 straight before dropping a decision to Marvin Vettori at UFC 286 last March. Was going to fight Derek Brunson. Then he had a fight booked against Jared Cannonier, who tore his MCL. I like both these guys, man. I love this division right now. We will need a main event prediction, KenFlo. Who do you have?
Yeah, I think that Brian did a good breakdown there. Dolidze can be very dangerous on the ground. There's no questions about it. He does have the ability to kind of submit you pretty quickly when he's on his game. I also think he's gained a lot of confidence in his striking, especially when he's moving forward. He's not the kind of slick style of like evade and counter similar to Imavov, but he is very powerful and he moves forward well. Gets his head out of that center line, lands some heavy shots, and that's where Imavov has to be careful. Imovov's volume can be a problem. When he waits for the perfect counter, that can be a problem. When he's getting taken down, that can be a problem. And when I'm looking at this, I just see it being a little bit, there's a little bit too many problems the way of Imavov. I do think it'd be an advantage, like Brian said, rounds 4 and 5. That's where Imavov, his durability and maybe his conditioning, if he's being efficient, that's where he can maybe take over in the fight, because Dolidze isn't the most efficient guy as far as managing his energy over the course of the fight. And of course, this being a 5-round main event in the UFC, that's a whole different ball of wax. So curious to see how both fighters really respond to that. But for me, I think I'm leaning towards Dolidze. I think if there's one guy who finishes the fight within, I guess, maybe the first 15 minutes, it's probably Dolidze. And Imavov could finish the fight, but I wouldn't see that happening until later on in the fight, like late in the fight. So leaning towards Dolidze, man. I think the threat of him on the ground and him being, I think, the more powerful striker in some ways is what gives him the advantage in this fight.
Nicely done, my man. As always, it is now time for my favorite part of the show. Place your bets this week, brought to you by johnanik.com, where you can use the promo code ONEMORESLEEP. One word, one more sleep, to get 20% off your order of Anik and Florian podcast merchandise at johnanik.com. All right, time to place your bets. You each have $1,000. Brian Petrie plus $55.86 on the year. Kenny Florian minus $120.82. BP, $1,000. Floor is yours.
Yeah, so I'm going to start right away with old Chuck Buffalo Rack. Yeah, plus 185. Give me $200 on the underdog there. I think that's a good spot for me. And then give me Randy Roadboy Brown minus 245 at $400. I like to go for whack there. And I'm going to jump in the prop pool. The prop pool's open from the emails. Yes. So let's go Dober by KO. Okay. That's going to be probably a small plus number, but I like plus numbers. So that's going to be $100. Okay. And then give me Imavov for $300. And that's my $1,000 right there.
Straight wager on Imavov at minus 166. And again, if you're wondering right now as we tape, perhaps Dober by knockout is not available on Draftkings Sportsbook. But once you guys find that proposition, you screen grab it, send it to me and Cody, and we will lock in that price for you on Drew Dober by knockout. KenFlo, $1,000. What are we doing this week, if anything?
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do actually a 3-fight parlay here for my pick. So yeah, I'm not going to take the risk of going $1,000 at this stage of the game. I don't want to get too far behind early in the year to Brian Petrie. So let's do $500. This is going to be my parlay here. Okay. Let's go with Randy Brown.
Okay.
Let's go with Hizriev.
Yep.
And let's go with Moicano for a 3-fight parlay. Let's see what happens for 500.
Outstanding. I love it. KenFlo just putting them on the table here on a Monday morning. Yeah. If you want more from Brian Petrie at Brian Petrie MMA, outstanding work as always, my man. Enjoy the rest of your day with your family, and we will talk to you next Monday.
Real quick, John, you had a rough week. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. Just know fans like me who've been there for 20 plus years, we love you. We appreciate you. And I'm glad that you sent that statement out. You know, we're all human here, but you're the man, brother.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that and all your support. Have a good week. All right, brother. Thank you. All right, Brian Petrie with us every week for the main event challenge. We got to get on out of here. Don't forget, remember the show with Bilal Muhammad and Jason Anik coming up live on Thursday on the Anik and Florian podcast channel. Perhaps Bilal will have a date by then. One More Sleep is your promo code at johnanik.com for show merchandise. KennyFlorianMartialArts.com, worth clicking on. KenFlo's website, almost worth clicking on as much as Argus Integrated Defense and A&R Tactics on Instagram. But if you're going to do one of those things, I would go check out those particular businesses on Instagram. Thanks to our guests, Paul Felder, Ray Longo, Brian Petrie, and the maestro Cody Bone Marrow for putting it all together. For KenFlo, I'm John Anik. Thank you all for watching, for listening. Tell your friends. We appreciate it. And from the bottom of my hat, I'd like to thank you all for the love and support. I'd like to take this time to apologize to absolutely fucking nobody. No, I'm just thank you all, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. I've spent hours responding to the love and some of the opposite of love. And I'm going to continue to be a conduit for the fans. But thank you all. Thanks for supporting the Anik and Florian podcast. We'll talk to you next Monday. Until then, go fuck it.
To the bread, he's cornbread. Cornbread! He's cornbread. Cornbread! Life is so precious, do the best that you can. Keep your hands on the bar, here's the open man. He's cornbread.